Hi there and welcome to the Pondering Dan podcast, where we talk all things teaching, education, pedagogy and technology. I'm your host Danny Summerall, and if you're new to the show, make sure you leave a review and share with your peers. Connect with me on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at Pondering Dan, as well as at ponderingdan.com. So my guest this week is Maz Ellery, a primary educator with over 13 years experience in education. Maz has worked at government and independent schools in Australia and internationally, both in the classroom and in specialist digital technology roles. She's about to embark on a new adventure working in Darwin in the Northern Territory, which sounds pretty exciting. You can follow Maz on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at Love to Teach and Travel, and that's spelt LV, the number 2, TEACH. NTRAVEL. Hi Maz, and thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Hi Dan, thanks so much for inviting me.
No worries.
This is very exciting.
I know, right? So I've always loved chatting with you because of your passion for education and in particular innovation in education. So it's so rare that you find other teachers with such similar professional interests, and it's always so nice to speak with you about them. So before we begin, I just wanted to note to our listeners out there the charity work that you've been part of in Malaysia. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I've actually done two different things in Malaysia. The first was in January of 2018, and that was with teachers from all around the world. That was with an organisation called LRTT, which stands for Limited Resources Teacher Training, and you can find out more information on the website lrtt.org. This got teachers from England, the UK, Australia, New Zealand and also America, and we all volunteered to train teachers in Penang, and because pretty much the teachers there do a university degree to become a teacher and then get no other support or professional development after that. So what we did is then we went in there and collaborated together and then upskilled them, which was pretty cool. And so we paid $2,000 for like everything, and that was food and accommodation and everything, and that also paid for the teachers to get free professional development from us, which they were very humbled by as well.
Yeah, great.
And then January of 2019, I went with Westgate Refugee Support, and you can find more information for them at westgaterefugees.org, and that's an organisation that goes and teaches refugees that are currently stranded in Kuala Lumpur, that have travelled all the way from Myanmar, which is a massive journey in itself.
Yeah.
And at the moment, the Malaysian government isn't allowing these children to have access to mainstream education, so they're just kids that want to learn and they aren't able to, so they've sort of developed these makeshift schools, and so volunteers go in and teach the kids. And so I also did some teacher training where I trained kids that were aged 12 to 17 that are expected to teach within those refugee schools that are refugees themselves, just because they're so eager to have teachers there. So both very different work and very exciting as well, and very confronting as well, working with the refugees and how small and how most of them don't have chairs and it's just working on the floor and things. But the kids are really happy and grateful to have a teacher and things when they get one. So
Wow. So these kids are kind of stuck in a bit of a limbo, really,
correct.
aren't they?
Yeah.
So it's pretty important work, which is why I thought it was worth mentioning here, because others out there might want to support these organisations. So if you want to do that, so where you get in touch with those, so that's lrtt.org.
Yep.
And what was the other one?
westgaterefugees.org.
Awesome. So if you feel like getting in touch with them, you can do that. I'll put the links in the description as well. So we've both developed a pretty good professional learning network on Twitter. So can you talk a bit about how you started on Twitter and what your initial perception of it was?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I actually was reflecting, as you do, with a new year sort of coming through, and sort of how much Twitter has changed how I perceive teaching and different things like that. And I was just doing a bit of reflection myself and logged onto Twitter, and it actually tells you when you signed up. And so I actually signed up to Twitter in 2014.
Yeah.
And I remember this was at a style PD, and they were, encouraging teachers to have an account. So I created one.
Yeah.
And but it really just sort of, I didn't really know too much then, and I sort of did a bit of tweeting, I guess, then, but then it sort of stood still for a couple of years. And it wasn't until I became a Seesaw ambassador and they encouraged tweeting and things. So I looked on to Seesaw and I started using Twitter again. But I was sort of tapping in here and there. And I came across the Aussie Ed chat, so hashtag Aussie Ed.
Yeah, really good chat.
A really great chat on a Sunday night at 8:30 Melbourne time. I'm not really sure the other times. But and so I was chatting along there, and it was... So this was in 2017 that I was really sort of getting back on, and I tweeted that I was going to do LRTT with the Aussie Ed chat, and one of the girls who was one of the co-founders, I think, Maggie, she said, "Oh, I'm actually going to LRTT and we're going to Malaysia together." I was just like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
And so I sort of checked out Maggie's profile, and she's got, thousands of followers. And so I sort of aspired to go, okay, I really need to have a chat with Maggie in real life, because we'd met, previously through the chats. And it was in Malaysia that we really stood down, we really had a bit of a good chat, and she really encouraged me to tweet more and sort of gave me a bit of a New Year's resolution to tweet more.
Yeah.
And she actually became like my Twitter mentor, which is a rare sort of thing that you can have. But I really treasure that we had that, because before that I had, 20 followers, or I wasn't really active, continuously. Yeah. And she was like, tweet about this or follow Friday, or there's lots of different things. And she guided me to guest host an Aussie Ed chat in February that year. And that was really exciting. And then I was just like, oh, okay, I can start tweeting with other people. And it was when I was volunteering with her that I sort of changed my perspective a little bit of teaching, and how learnt about the cognitive load and different things. And it just sort of opened my mind a little bit further and got me sort of engaging in Twitter and different things. And it was through Twitter that I found TeachTechPlay. And so...
By the wonderful Eleni Kiritsis.
That's correct. And she tweeted to me and said, "Oh, why don't you come along to this PD?" And I was just like, "Oh, okay." This is sort of the first thing that had come from Twitter. And when my boss was like, "Oh, where did you find out?" And I said, "Oh, from Twitter." She was just like, "Oh, that's," because not all the teachers are on there. And I was probably the only one at my school at the time that was using Twitter.
Well, and I suppose some people might think it's an unexpected place to find professional development too.
Yeah. And this, I guess, was the first thing that was just like, oh, okay, Twitter's pretty powerful. You can do really cool things. And it was actually at the TeachTechPlay PD that, you follow the hashtag and everyone's tweeting, that I actually found you, Dan, that you were following and you were there. And so that's how I started.
I was sitting in front of you, I think, wasn't I?
Well, no. And so I was just like, oh, who's this Dan guy? Okay, and sort of looked at some of your tweets and everything. And so we connected online first. Yeah. And then because I knew that you were at the PD, I was just like, oh, how about we meet up and, had a coffee and then, connected. And so it was from there. Yeah.
Which, that was a couple of years ago now,
that was April 2018.
Yeah,
so not too.
The first holidays of the year that year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was and it's funny because I've had a pretty similar journey into Twitter as well, where I think I started it around 2013 as well, but didn't know anything and I didn't know what to do. But then once I started teaching, I had a mentor as well, which is Beck Spink, and I think that's her Twitter handle as well. But she sort of gave me a lot of ideas and advice to get on there. And once I started, I sort of got the hang of it, but then it just sort of all fell to the background. I think I got busy and just wasn't sure I was doing it right. And then I think probably the same time as you, 2017, I just sort of kicked it into gear, and I just thought, you know what, I just like to share these things with people because I like to give other people ideas, and if they take it, they take it. If they don't, that's okay. But I just found it a good place to share all of that sort of stuff. And And likewise,
Yeah.
that's how we ended up connecting,
Yeah.
and it's how I've made a lot of connections as well.
Yeah.
That I really value.
What
So-
I think is really good about Twitter is that sometimes in the schools that you work in, you don't necessarily have like-minded people or people
Yeah.
that sort of have the same sort of views as you, and it just allows you to connect with other teachers that do and make you feel confident that actually what you're doing is a really great thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I think Twitter's really, really powerful, and I think it opens many opportunities that you wouldn't have if you were just teaching in your
Yeah.
classroom.
And it often makes me think and wonder about, what would it have been like before the internet, really, for
Well-
teachers. I mean, it would have been pretty isolating if you were an innovator in education, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But
I think that was, when I first started my uni, as a
Yeah.
graduate teacher,
Yeah.
that we weren't really using the internet, that much, but you were just
Yeah.
innovating in the classroom, and it was
yeah.
still heaps of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I guess for me, I want to know from you, has being active on social media as a teacher changed the way that you think or talk about education?
Well, I think doing LRTT, that was a really standpoint that changed things. But then it was from there that I really connected with other educators, and that
Yeah.
was a really positive thing to learn different ways of doing things. And like last year when I was teaching beyond a subject called Beyond 2020, and I was having to teach about AI, and I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
this is not something that I would normally teach in a junior school classroom.
Yeah.
So I just actually tweeted out to the community, and I said, does anyone have any resources for AI? And they found the AI for Good challenge, and
Yeah.
they found some really great websites and things, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have tweeted
Yeah.
out. So I feel like Twitter is such a safe space to ask for help and ask,
Yeah.
and find out different things. So it's definitely changed so that I have got more resources and more
Yeah.
up-to-date resources, not
Yeah.
back in the day you would have had a folder of sheets and different things. I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
Now it's current, and,
Yeah.
asking people that are really doing these
Yeah.
things instead of just going, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And one of the people that spoke at TeachTechPlay was Casey
Bell.
Casey
Yeah,
Bell,
Shake Up Learning.
Shake Up Learning.
Yeah.
And, I've got her book, and she just really was a great inspiration. And I, take her book on holidays and things because
Yeah.
it's just so great to have that inspiration and to go, okay, well, and she's got the hashtag, that's the way we've always done it. She doesn't want
Yeah.
that. And so I think just...
It is a really good book. I've found a lot of value from it as well, and I like that it's kind of interactive in that you go through a chapter and then there's questions, but it takes you to links to her website where you can contribute to her Shake Up Learning community.
Yeah.
And it just broadens the ideas.
Yeah.
I guess one downside to it all, though, is that you can end up with too many ideas. Because I don't know about you, but I have a real problem with what I call Google drifting, when you have 50 tabs open and you're like, you know what, I don't have time to read these now, but I'll go
The
back and
tabs,
get them.
the
And,
tabs.
and that's probably my biggest weakness with Twitter, is that I probably take on too much there. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it is so, so good.
But I think that's, one thing that's really important, that there's always going to be so much inspiration.
Yeah.
That goes for us shopping. There's always going to be so many sales, but one will hook you in and one will go,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to buy that, or
Yeah.
I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So I think don't get overwhelmed by Twitter, I think is a really good piece of advice, that there are lots of great things, but choose one that really sits well with you and
Yeah.
run with that.
Yeah.
And do that well, rather than
Yeah.
trying to do too much, because then you'll get and things won't work as well. Whereas if you got one that you really like, for example, I chose Seesaw for a while and really became an ambassador, which is free to do, and really hooked in and learnt how great that was to use in year 2, year 3 classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I found out about Seesaw Ambassador Program as well, and a lot of the ambassador programs which I had never heard of before. We were going to talk a bit about advice for teachers about Twitter, but you've already touched on it a little bit now. And I think what you said before, and when we're talking about mentors, I think that's a really important point as well, because I know for me, and probably for you as well, we probably wouldn't have developed the network we have if we didn't have those mentors to get us started.
Yeah.
And I think some advice that I could give to our listeners as well is, reach out to people on Twitter. Send them a message and say, hey, I'm new to Twitter. Can you give me some advice? What do I do? And no one's going to say no.
Yeah.
really, everyone that we connect with are pretty good people.
Yeah.
I think, anyway.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Any questions that I've had anytime, like people will tweet publicly or, send them a direct message. Everyone's really happy to help. Yeah.
And it sort of lifts your spirits a bit to know that everyone's sort of a big team. You're a teacher, you're part of that team. So
yeah, I think when you go out in the social media world, that's sort of a given, sort of to some regard. Like if you're posting this is what you're doing publicly, then you're more than happy to, as a teacher, like happy to help other teachers progress the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, in the end, we all want the best for those kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thinking about all the different opportunities that I've had because of Twitter, I've been lucky to get to talk at conferences, and I've got to travel a little bit because of it, and been on podcasts, and the award that I got last year as well, that wouldn't have all happened if it wasn't for me sharing on Twitter. But I know you've had a bit of success as well and a few opportunities because of Twitter. Can you go into that a little bit?
So I have talked at a webisode of TeachTechPlay, and I think you were actually on the same episode because we're friends and do everything together.
That's it.
Which is really cool. So I think that was my first sort of thing that sort of came about from Twitter, and then sort of attending some different professional developments, and then late last year I started using gamification in my classroom, and I'd used it in like little doses sort of here and there, but this time I was sort of using it for all of everything that I was sort of doing in my classroom. And I was teaching Year 5, and I was teaching about the gold rush, and I just created a game of Survivor, and it was really cool, and they were each in tribes, and so I was just tweeting about it because I was loving what I was doing. Like I was having so much fun. The kids were loving it. The parents were calling up saying, "Oh my goodness, my child is having so much fun."
I remember your post on Twitter actually because it did look like a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, I was doing a cover at the time, so it wasn't my class as such. So it was very different to sort of how they were used to learning, and they were just thriving on it and learning so much and going really deep into the learning, which was really exciting. And so, as I sort of tweeted about it, I was also putting it on LinkedIn and everything. And then I was contacted by Mr. Matera, who is the author of Explore Like a Pirate, one of Dave Burgess' sort of authors. Dave Burgess, look him up, Teach Like a Pirate. He's amazing to connect with and really exciting. And so Mr. Matera contacted me and said, would you like to be on a podcast of his Well Played play, and then the ED for education? So that was amazing, really exciting to be on. And I actually shared that podcast because it was also on YouTube with my parents, and they were like, oh, that sounds so exciting, and you're so passionate. And, I think it's really exciting that social media allows you to be able to share more of your classroom with the parents and the ones you actually want them to be supporting you as an educator as well.
So they can see you're not just doing the same old. That their kids are actually getting to do something a bit different, but still of value. And of course, Michael Matera has the Hive Summit. That's right, isn't it? So,
and that's where I found him.
Yeah, and so I think he does that every year, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's a free webinar, I guess. And so you just sign up to the Hive Summit, and so in your pajamas, or because he is in America, so it's obviously at different times to Australia, but you can just watch these videos and just be motivated by these educators of different things that you can do in the classroom. And it's not always, like, we talk a lot about tech, but it's not always about tech. Like when I gamified my classroom, that actually had nothing to do with technology. It was just a really engaging strategy to use. And likewise, they talk about, it's really important about building relationships with your students, and there's lots of different aspects that the different summits that you can do promote.
Excellent. So you've already talked a bit about Aussie Ed, which is one of the Twitter chats, and we've both been part of that before, and I know you've hosted that in the past. Do you have any other great Twitter chats which our listeners should go and check out?
So my favourite, my ultimate favourite
I think you're going to say the same as what I'm thinking.
is on a Thursday night, and it's primary STEM chat. So I actually put a reminder in my phone initially going, make sure you log on to the chat, because I just found that Rachel Leah, who is the main host of that.
Amazing educator.
Amazing
Yeah.
educator, posts amazing things, so supportive. I've guest hosted, I think, 3 times.
Yep.
And she's like, Maz, if you want to guest host again, just let me know. And I was just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
because I think guest hosting initially was a really like, whoa, a bit scary, but it really helped me to see sort of how TweetDeck, I don't use TweetDeck only for if I'm guest hosting, and we'll like set up,
make it manageable,
and set up tweets to happen in advance.
Yeah.
But Primary STEM Chat is just like educators that are wanting to try different things, and they're just awesome. They're awesome people to connect with.
And you don't need to be a STEM educator.
No.
Because there's so much that they cover in that chat. You don't even need to be a primary educator, actually, because I know we have a lot of secondary teachers that actually join us there. And I'm pretty sure there's a few uni lecturers that join in as well.
Yeah. So that'll be a chat that I will regularly join in on. And then, every now and again, I'll just like the Teach Like a Pirate. There's also Teach Like a Pirate Down Under, which is, hashtag TLAP Down Under.
Yeah, by Karen Caswell, another great educator.
Yeah. And it's just also like the hashtag XPLAP, which was Mr. Materials Explore Like a Pirate.
Yeah.
So there's always some good ones that not necessarily I'm joining in on the chats, but I'm just sort of following in every now and again.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing too. You don't really have to join in with them. You don't have to be part of those conversations, but you can lurk from the sidelines and see what's happening. And that's usually what I tell people when they're going onto a chat for the first time is just watch, see how other people do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw in there as well some other good ones. PST chat, which is for pre-service teachers.
I've hosted that too.
And I think they're every Tuesday night when school goes back. And and now I've had a mental blank and I can't think of the other one that I was going to say. If I think of it, I'll put it in the description later on. So what do you think the biggest benefit to teachers is from joining these chats?
I think the biggest thing is it's professional development. You just really need to change your thinking that it's actually professional development. So when you're needing to log what you've done, like if you spend an hour on a Twitter chat, you're learning all these ideas, connecting with other educators. That's professional development. It's a really healthy way to connect with other educators as well. And so I think, why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know that, and I learnt this from Rachel Lear from Primary STEM Chat, is a lot of Twitter chat hosts will set up a wakelet, which is, I guess, like a stream of anything that has been recorded under a certain hashtag on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I've set up my own wakelet account. So if I'm hosting or if I've participated, I will save that chat in my own wakelet so that I have got a record of my professional development there. And it's free. So, I mean...
And I think that's what's great about Twitter is that you can learn about different things. Like I've actually used Wakelet to keep all my resources in the one spot because you can put like websites there and you can put PDFs there and there's lots of different things that you can put there. So if you've got a certain topic or something that you're teaching, that's a really great space. And
absolutely,
I think I've learnt so much from other people. I've learnt apps I can use. Like Minecraft was something that I was sort of hesitant to use, but it's like my favorite game in the world. And at the moment, because I'm in between jobs and don't have a computer, it's just like I miss Minecraft.
You've had your niece to play Minecraft with lately though, haven't you?
Just use their iPad.
That's it. Now we're going to wrap up in a minute, but before we do, I want you to tell our listeners your top 5 people they should go and follow straight away on Twitter.
Okay, well this is my first one, and we've mentioned her today, is the Primary STEM Chat host, Rachel Lear. And Rachel, I guess we'll have to look at her because sometimes your Twitter handles are a little bit different to...
I know hers is her name. Rachel Lear. Yeah. And her name, Rachel, is spelled AEL. So Rachel's
RACHAEL. I think it's underscore. Is it?
LEHR.
Yeah.
But if you can't find her, you look for the @Primary STEM Chat handle as well. She runs both. So.
Yeah, and the Primary STEM Chat, I guess she's also got its own handle as well. So I think it's really important to look on that. If you feel like you don't want to be overwhelmed, then just go to that
Follow
one.
that,
because that will have the weekly chats.
Yeah.
Stephen Kolber, so STEVEN_KOLBER. He's a Melbourne educator, and at the moment he's currently in Cambodia volunteering and teaching with teaching across borders, and so
doing a wonderful job.
doing an amazing job, and so that's something that he does twice a year. But he also in Melbourne organises some teach meets. So he gets teachers together, and teachers can present on different things that they're doing in the classroom. And I was able to do that this year, but relocating to Darwin, I'll miss those.
Yeah, you might have to start some up there, a Darwin branch.
Yeah.
I think he hosts them it's usually Brunswick Secondary College, so it's a pretty central location.
Yeah.
So most Melbourne teachers should be able to get there when he hosts them. So keep an eye out for those.
Yeah, but other teachers are actually starting to host them as well. So he's encouraging them to step out of their comfort zone, I guess, a little bit and host them too, which is good. Dan, you're always on my list, Pondering Dan. I always recommend anyone that starts up Twitter to follow you, because I think you always post some great things that you're doing, in your different roles. And I'm always very inspired by you, and very lucky to call you my friend. Well, Mr. Matera, so MRMATERA, who is the main person for the Hive Summit and all of that sort of stuff. So I really like following him, and he's got some great YouTube videos as well, which are awesome to see about gamification. And my last one is Paul Hamilton. So he just you just watch his videos, and he does a lot about AR, and it's just amazing the different things that he creates and uses Keynote. Keynote is my ultimate favorite thing to use at the moment.
I'm in the same boat with you. I have learnt a ton from Paul Hamilton. He's an absolutely incredibly smart human being, and I love seeing what he puts out there. It's really fun stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess when I, to think of the top, they're not top 5 or anything like that. They're just 4 very different. I wanted to try and sort of create a list of some different people. So because, you can sort of come up with 5 that are all sort of the similar, but then you're not getting a scope. But there are so many, I started, like I said, with about 20 sort of followers in 2017, and it's not about, getting heaps of followers, but it's about connecting with a lot of amazing people. And I think that you've got so many people out there that are willing to connect and wanting to share ideas, that's the power of Twitter.
Yeah, you're right. And I think it's, you're right. It's not about the followers, but as you get more, you kind of feel validated that the work you're doing is worthwhile and that it is exciting and new, and people are getting something from it, which I think that's what we really want, isn't it?
100%.
So what was your Twitter handle again, and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is LV, the number 2, TEACH, the letter N, TRAVEL. So love to teach and travel.
Yeah, excellent. And I think it's the same for Instagram
so
and
I've
Facebook.
Now, because Twitter didn't allow me to have the O and the E, so I used to have love to teach and travel, spelt correctly. But Twitter has limitations, so I've actually changed my teacher accounts for Instagram and Facebook to all be the same as Twitter, so it's easy to find me then.
And it makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah.
So I wrote a blog post last year about some great people and some great hashtags to follow. So I'll put the link for that in the description as well if you want to get started. I think I've listed 100 different educators from around the world, not just from Australia. So make sure you check that out. The list is probably a little bit out of date now, but I mean, it's a good place to start. So thank you so much, Maz, for being part of the show today.
You're welcome.
If you have any questions for Maz or myself, reach out. You can email me at dan@ponderingdan.com, or you can reach out on Twitter, or you can reach out to Maz on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. So remember to leave a review for this podcast. It will really help it grow. And until next time, I'm Danny.
And I'm Maz.
Bye.